Did you know that learning just one new word a day can boost your vocabulary? Yeah, by over 365 words in a year. And that's enough to really make a difference. But now here's the real question. How much more confident would you feel speaking English if you actually remembered those words and then used them naturally? So, this bow tie is a good reminder of how English really works. You don't need a full wardrobe change. You don't need to study for hours. You just need one small, consistent habit that you repeat every single day. Just like me, putting on this lovely bow tie every day. And tonight, I want to show you one of the simplest habits there is. A word of the day English routine that actually sticks. And here's the trick that makes it work. I call it the 3x1 rule. One word, one real sentence, one real use. That's it. You're not trying to memorize lists or cramming vocabulary. Just one word a day, one moment, one sentence, and that becomes a habit. And you'll build it up. And so, now that I've got this bow tie done, hit that like button for me, tap the subscribe, and share this with someone learning English. And drop your questions in the chat because I'll answer a few live at the end of the show. And don't forget to stick around because the Mastery Minute today might be exactly what you need if you've ever felt stuck. All right, let's get into it. And I'm going to introduce you to Jason. Jason's a good guy. He was always very motivated. He had apps on his phone, flashcards on his desk, and notebooks full of vocabulary. But here's the problem. None of it showed up when he actually spoke. And he told me, Dennis, I study words, but I can't use them. So I said, let's stop doing that. Instead of doing more, let's do less. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's what we did. We created a word of the day habit, one word a day, no pressure, no tests, and then 2 weeks later, something interesting happened. Jason started noticing words in meetings, in emails, in podcasts, and without thinking about it, he actually started using them. That's the difference between just collecting vocabulary and actually owning it. So let me show you how this works. But let me ask you a real quick question. Have you ever sat down to study English, learned a bunch of new words, and then a week later or even maybe a day later, you realize that you can't remember most of them? Yeah, you're not alone. Most people think that progress comes from doing more words, more apps, more study time. But that's not how your brain works. That's not how language works. And that's not how it sticks. Your brain remembers things that show up again and again and again. So things that you actually use. You know, the stuff that's connected to real life, not just a list on a screen. And that's why this one word a day method used on purpose beats 10 words that never leave your notebook. So let's break this routine down in a very simple, realistic way. I'll give it to you step by step. Step number 1, choose one useful word. All right? This part matters more than you think. You don't want a fancy word. You don't want a rare word. You don't want what you do want is a word that actually shows up in your life. And here's the simple trick. To find good words, just steal them from your day. Pay attention to words you hear in meetings, words you see in emails, words that come up again and again in podcasts or videos or news. Or you might even try this one, a daily word of the day email. I like Merriam-Webster. You can go to Merriam-Webster, search that on the internet, and they will send one straight to my inbox every single day. So if a word keeps showing up, your brain is already telling you that it's useful. For example, you might have clarify, handle, expect, flexible. Those are words that you can imagine. And you can imagine using that word today in the office or tomorrow in a meeting, in an email, or in a short conversation. Boom, that's your word. You're not studying English now, you're building a habit. And once you have your word picked out for the day, here's how you make it stick. Step 2. Now here's where people tend to make things harder than they need to be. And they do it entirely by accident. It's not something they're trying to do. They read a word, they'll look it up and find out what it means, and then they'll stop. But that's not how your brain works. Remember? That's not how you remember words. Because you remember that words don't live by themselves. They live inside of sentences. So don't learn English one brick at a time. You need to learn it in small, steady, ready-made pieces, right? So instead of just learning clarify, you should grab a phrase that goes with it. Make it a real sentence. Can you clarify that? Or let me clarify my point. Think about it. When was the last time you said a single word by itself in real life? Almost never. I mean, really. And that's because your brain remembers patterns, rhythm, and purpose, not dictionary entries. That's why the word of the day works best. All right? When words show up already doing its job inside of a real sentence, it makes it easier to remember. It's in context. Now, once you've got the sentence in your head, there's one small step that locks it in for good. All right? And this is a two-parter. Step 3, say it out loud. Yes, I said it. Say it out loud. I'm always going to tell you that. Say it out loud. This is the part that most everyone skips. And I get it because it can feel a little awkward. You're alone. You're busy. You think, I'll just read it. No, it doesn't care. But this is where the habit really locks in. That's why it's so important. Because you're building neural pathways in your brain. That's how this all works. So, the first thing I recommend you do is you write it down. Okay? Not typing, but actually write it. Pen and paper. There's something powerful about slowing your hand down and forming the words on a paper. It forces your brain to pay attention and start building those neural connections that I was just talking about. Step 2 of this step is to say it out loud. That's the say it out loud part. Say the word, say the full sentence once or twice. I mean, once is enough, but a couple of times doesn't hurt. Because speaking activates your brain differently than reading or scrolling. You're not just recognizing the word, you're producing it. And that combination of writing it by hand and saying it out loud is what really cements the word in your vocabulary. And it helps it to show up later when you're speaking. It's like building your muscle memory. This may feel like a very small step, but this is where vocabulary turns into muscle memory. You remember it from writing it, speaking it, reading it, and hearing it. Once it's in your muscles, there's just one last step that I want you to take, okay? This is the last one. Now this part sounds a little too easy, and that's exactly why it works. Your only goal is to use the word one time. Okay? One sentence, one message, one thought. That's it. You're done. So let me give you a real example from one of my clients. Now, she works in an international team and already has good English, but she always feels her vocabulary disappears in meetings. One day, her word of the day was flag. Not like the flappy waving in the breeze flag, but the flag in the sense of pointing out an issue. So later that afternoon, she sent a short message that said, "Hey, I just wanted to flag this before the meeting." That was it. Just one sentence. And the result was, after that, the word stuck. See, when you use a word in real life, in a real situation, even just one time, your brain flags it as important. It goes, "Oh yeah, this matters." And that's why it's important. It says keep this. And that's how we build vocabulary from I know this to I use this. And then once you've used it, there's one final step that makes this habit even stronger. Okay? And this is kind of an optional step, but you're going to love it. It's so easy to do. Now this step is pair it with shadowing. Excuse me. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, Dennis, I've been studying for years and I feel stuck, then this step is especially for you. Actually, all of these steps are for you, because if you've been studying for years, like a lot of learners, they hit this plateau, this level ground. They practice and practice and practice, and then, oh no, well, they're kind of stuck there. But if you practice this method, it's going to help you to break that habit and break that plateau. All right? Doesn't mean you're bad at English, but you've stopped feeding English into your ears. And that's where the shadowing experience comes in. Here's how I explain it to my clients. Listen to a short clip, something natural, a podcast, a YouTube video, a meeting recording. Okay? Then repeat what you hear. You don't have to be perfect, not dramatic, just enough to match the rhythm of the speaking. And then here's the key part. Notice how your word of the day shows up naturally in that sentence. Easy, right? You're not just learning vocabulary now. Now you're absorbing the rhythm and the tone and confidence of someone who's actually speaking that word. And this habit helps to get people unstuck. Shadowing reminds your brain what real English sounds like, and then slowly, without pressure, your own English starts to follow. And when you combine these, listening, speaking, and one small daily word, that's how fluent speakers actually grow their English, especially when they thought they had hit a ceiling and couldn't go anymore. So, I just want to say you don't need motivation every day. All you need is a system where you take one word every day, no stress, and be consistent, because consistency beats intensity every single time. Don't stress out. It's all right. And here's your challenge for today. Choose one word from today. Then say it out loud. Just learn one phrase. Remember, that's the second step. Choose the word, find the phrase, say it out loud, and then use it once. All right? You can read the full blog about this. The link is down in the description, and and you can see some more examples and stuff like that. And if you want a complete system for mastering and improving your English in just 10 minutes a day, check out my course, Mastering English for Busy Professionals. It's just for you. No boring textbooks, no memorization. It's just practical habits that actually work every day. And before we move on, like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and drop your questions in the chat, because now, you know what time it is. It's time for the Mastery Minute. And I know this is my favorite part of the show. So today's mastery phrase. Let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever started strong with something new, like learning English, and then slowly stopped? Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's not a motivation problem. That is a momentum problem. I mean, think about pushing a heavy object, like a car stuck on the side of the road. At the beginning, it's brutal. It's really tough. You're leaning into it, your legs are shaking, nothing's really moving. But then slowly, it starts to roll. And then once it's moving, wow, when it gets started moving, then you don't need nearly as much effort to keep going. That is momentum. So the phrase build momentum actually comes from physics. And the idea is that once something is in motion, it naturally wants to stay in motion. The hardest part isn't continuing. The hardest part is starting. Because let's face it, at first, everything feels heavy. Every word feels like work. But when you learn and use just one word a day, you'll start the movement. One word turns into two words turns into confidence, and suddenly English doesn't feel so heavy anymore. It feels familiar. So remember, don't aim for perfection. Aim for movement, momentum. One small word today is how confidence starts rolling. And with that said, I got to say, that's a wrap for episode 103. And tonight, we just talked about how a simple word of the day English habit can transform how you speak without stress or long study sessions. Next episode, we're going to talk about a habit that trains your ears, not your eyes. Well, a little bit, and helps English start sounding natural instead of fast and confusing. Okay? Until then, remember, keep your bow tie straight, keep your English practical, and stay curious. I'm Dennis Wilborn, and this has been 15 Minute Mastery. See you next time.